Welcome to the Trump Tyranny Tracker. It's been a couple of days since we've done one of these, but hello, Olga Lautman. It's good to see you. You've been developing can I talk about this? Am I not allowed to talk about? You've been developing an app. You were just telling me about a cat meowing. How exciting!
Yeah, very. I actually signed up for a master's for cybersecurity, and I am now learning the technical stuff. So one of my first projects was to create an app.
You don't do enough, Olga. So I'm
No,
glad you found time to do a course on cybersecurity and learn how to do
two
an app.
semesters I have to
Oh,
do. I
oh
wish it
my
was a
gosh!
course.
Well, good for you.
Three courses, three courses per semester I'm sorry, 4 semesters, 2 years, three courses per semester.
Wow, what a
There we
huge
go.
undertaking. What does the app do? Does it just meow?
Well, I had to create two basic apps. One, when you tap it meows, the other one connecting Flickr to places that I'd like to be in. That way you can automatically visit that place.
Oh, how cool.
Like you uh, click on the place and it takes you to Flickr photos of the place. So
You
to
never
watch.
cease to amaze me. What an incredible undertaking at this time.
Why
There's so
did
much
I
else to
do
do.
this?
Well, it's always good to learn. Never stop learning, right? It's now the day 240 of the Trump administration that we're looking at today as we continue our look at authoritarian creep in the U.S. And the top story today is all about the New York Times. Two stories related to the New York Times. Yesterday, they uncovered a stunning quid pro quo after an after an Emirati sovereign entity tied to Sheikh Tarnoon committed $2 billion to World Liberty Financial. Now, we knew about this, but what was really great about this article is it gave us a much deeper insight into how they did it. Plus, it really underlined the Trump-Witkoff crypto venture, which really is an interesting partnership. The White House moved to grant the UAE access to hundreds of thousands of top-tier AI chips, and Steve Witkoff serves as the Trump's Middle East envoy, who, while crypto czar David Sachs advised World Liberty, that means there's a lot of conflicting interests as they were trying to negotiate this quid pro quo. It looks like a quid pro quo.
Yeah, and so just mentioning creep, I think we do have to adjust the creep. Authoritarianism isn't creeping, it's already here.
Yeah,
Um,
true. Good point.
yeah. But yeah, this story, I mean, is something that we've covered in pieces. The New York Times actually did an amazing job putting it all together. Witkoff is not only the Middle East envoy, he's also Putin's best friend, who's been running around to Russia back and forth and attempting to do everything in his power to try to force Ukraine to surrender. His son is partners with Don Jr. and the rest of the Trump family with this World Liberty Financial. And here you have, again, not only the corruption, which the, the Trump regime is operating identical to how Putin's regime operates in Russia, using state resources and using state power to enrich themselves. But the one thing they have never done, which should frighten Americans, is they've never compromised national security. And
Mm.
here you have Trump not only enriching himself and his family members and everyone very openly, but at the same time, they're compromising America's national security. So, I mean, the story I recommend for anyone who does have a New York Times subscription. I know many times I've been frustrated with them, and I know people have canceled, but this is definitely worth a story to read, and just to see the sheer volume of corruption that is in our face.
So to be clear here, what happened was they got a $2 billion investment in crypto for World Liberty Financial, which is owned by the Trump family and the Witkoff child. On the other hand, they gave the UAE something they'd never given them before, which is access to these AI chips, which are so important for the future of technology. And the thinking is that, there was a quid pro quo there, the $2 billion in exchange for access to these chips, which had previously been refused to the UAE. And the other interesting thing is that David Sachs, who's the crypto czar, was involved in this too, which seems, what's he doing in the middle of all of this?
Yeah, and I mean, David Sachs, again, I hate to keep going back to Russia, is another one who prior to January of 2022, I checked his social media and any commentary. Prior to that, he never even mentioned the word Russia or Ukraine. Post January 2022, he made it his like hourly job to post Kremlin propaganda and lies about Ukraine. So this is another, one who is involved in this. What I would say is UAE may not be funding Trump on their own. They are a known cutout for Russia, and for that matter, for China. And for that matter, we don't know where this money is coming from. So, I
Right.
mean, China, they have a very close relationship and actually a technological um, a partnership with China. So, I mean, here you have America's national security being compromised. We don't know who in the hell is buying off Trump. We don't know who is buying his children off. All we do know is that we are, our national security is in danger while he gets enriches himself and his family and his allies. And at the same time, like I said, the anonymity of crypto, we don't know where this money is coming from.
And
It could
that's
be
really interesting.
one of our adversaries.
The backdooring of these AI chips could be a real issue if they land up in Chinese hands or they land up in Russia hands. I mean, that's the last thing America needs. So you're absolutely right about that. As much as the money flow into the Trump, family now, as much as $5 billion or more, even in terms of the amount of money they've amassed in crypto, it's quite something. Now, related to the story is the Trump. Has now filed $15 billion lawsuit against the New York Times. So the next day, after they published this expose, same day as this expose, the New York, there he goes with a lawsuit against the New York Times, several reporters at the Times, and Penguin Random House over their reporting on his wealth and the book called Lucky Loser. And it's unusual timing, obviously, but you must imagine that these two things have something to do with each other.
Yeah, I mean, Trump has had it for the New York Times for a decade. He's threatened them for the past decade. But the fact, he threatened to sue them actually last week when they confirmed the Epstein, that photograph that he drew to Epstein of a naked woman's outline. But he never filed through. Yesterday, this story comes out, and hours later, it's like that was what basically pushed him to announce that he's filing this suit. So again, I hate to bring it back to Russia. I just actually wrote an article for anyone interested in how these tactics are happening here. Um, but the fact is, I mean, in Russia, journalists, there were investigative journalists and media outlets for a better part of Putin's 25 or 26 years. Over the past 7 years, they're completely gone with the journalist either dead, jailed, or had to, flee the country. Um, a lot of it was for investigative work on corruption, for tracing, theft of money. I mean, with Russia, there's scandals, one after another. And here you have the same thing where you have, this intimidation against journalists for simply doing their job. I mean, all they're doing is, protecting Americans from any potential corruption or, anything that may affect Americans, because ultimately it affects the people. This is not just that, Trump is turning this into a kleptocracy and we're all going to be fine. We are the ones who are going to bear the fruit of his theft and corruption. And, the fact, like I said, I personally think this lawsuit was announced hours after this investigation came in. And I think that's for this.
It's really interesting as well that, he's used these lawsuits before in the CBS case to get them to buckle for a takeover by Skydance, which is Oracle related. I've noticed in the last couple of days they've had a TikTok announcement, which is also Oracle related. So that could form another behemoth in terms of social media and mainstream media. But Oracle is also now taking a stab at Warner, at CNN and all the other properties at Warner. These are a consolidation of all these news brands into one massive news operation run by Oracle, which is ties to Bibi Netanyahu.
You know where that happened? In Russia, where all the media outlets were consolidated. TV news, print news, everything was consolidated again, under Putin's thugs, their companies. And then from there, they directed, what can and cannot be investigated, printed, and whatnot. You still had, like I said, some semblance of investigative journalism, but that all got washed away after 2019. Um, so here you have the same thing happening. You have these big companies. I believe Paramount is also seeking Disney, which ties directly to CNN. And you're already beginning to see our media self-censor because you have enough of these cases happen publicly. Others begin to self-censor because they don't want to, one, go through the lawsuits. Two, with the lawsuits comes, of course, the MAGA wrath of being targeted, doxxed, or your family members threatened, and you having to leave your home. I mean, so it comes a lot with it, and you see, these are the same tactics being employed here that were there.
It used to be illegal to own more than 2 TV stations and 2 newspapers in one market. Now, one company's going to own absolutely everything. Our third story today reveals a systematic takeover in another way. Across Georgia, Arizona, and North Carolina, Trump-aligned election deniers have won appointments to local election boards. Some have already refused to certify results, pushed mass voter purges, and demanded hand counts, while Trump installs election deniers in federal posts with authority over election infrastructure. It's a big story.
Yeah, and before I get into this story, yesterday we missed this because my fault. I with school. But over the weekend there was a very big story that I really should have put here, and it hit me as you were reading this. Um, he called the government got access to something called SAVE, SAVE. It's some kind of an application, surveillance application, and there was a story that they already scanned 30 million immigrants through this app, basically to check their citizenship status. So surveillance is here. It's being used. This is not for undocumented immigrants. This is for all of us, anyone who was not born in the United States. Um, and then this ties to this because we've been reporting over the past several months how they have been trying to gain access to voter rolls and whatnot. And now you have not only Trump systematically dismantling election infrastructure at the top. You have the Department of Justice going state to state to try to get their voter rolls. But now at the same time, you have these election deniers and conspiracy freaks that, frankly, in any normal timeline would be like on the fringes. No one would pay attention to them. Now being embedded in these, positions within states. So, I mean, we are really, really barreling towards a big crisis with all of this happening together when it comes to the midterms. And Democrats really need to, the leadership really needs to wake up and start sounding the alarm on this because we're 1 year out from election. And this is something, you see, they literally, Trump was in power, I believe, like 2 weeks, and he started with election stuff. I mean, that was the first instinct he had, was to go after the election infrastructure and at the same time embed that. Not to mention that in the federal agency, we have election deniers, conspiracy theorists, participants of the insurrection embedded throughout, the various agencies also dealing with elections.
It's undoubted that this administration is looking to rig the next elections in every way possible, and they're doing it on every front. So you're right about Democrats needing to find a way to respond to that. Finally, today, Trump, J.D. Vance, and senior officials used Charlie Kirk's podcast to announce plans to target liberal nonprofits and protest networks as, quote, domestic terrorists, and protest networks. I'm not sure I'm following the way it's written, to target liberal nonprofits and protest networks as domestic terrorists. They're floating RICO prosecutions, stripping tax-exempt status, and investigating donors like the Ford Foundation and George Soros, all without any evidence of coordinated violent movements at all. What an overreach.
It is an overreach, and this is exactly what my article was written about because, I mean, I hate to keep saying Russia, but I wish I knew about China and other regimes if I had any knowledge about other authoritarian regimes as far as the intimate details that I could rattle off, in a coma. I would focus on them. But in Russia, this is exactly what happens. I mean, they went first, it started with, the minority groups, the Muslims after Putin blew up apartment buildings to get into power, the Chechens, and they were the target test cases in order to consolidate power, to test the limits of power, to, how you call it, basically enact crackdowns and whatnot. And then it went after opposition and whatever. I mean, with Russia, it's, like flipping a coin with opposition parties. You don't know which one is crafted by the Kremlin in order to have, like, give a Trojan horse of that you have options there, or actual legitimate leaders like Nemtsov, who was, gunned down in front of the Kremlin, well, in the sight of the Kremlin, as on the directions of Russia. Um, so you had them then go after these opposition parties. Then they went after all the organizations that document abuses, the memorial, which um, and not only documented abuses, but also was putting together, a lot of research and information on Stalin's crimes, the mass graves, the gulags. I mean, all the atrocities, because people seem to forget when I when I mentioned that Stalin killed. I mean, he committed a genocide in Ukraine where 5 to 7 million were killed from the famine, Holodomor, and at the same time, he also, I mean. Sent millions to gulags, executed people. I mean, he was a horror. And Memorial was documenting this. They got shut down. You had NGOs when people get arrested at protests who were providing free counsel to protesters. That got shut down. What did they get shut down? One, they're the enemy of the people, which we hear here and there. It's like, a common thing coming from the government. And two, they were deemed as extremist organizations or terrorist organizations or, working um, as foreign agents for Western intelligence services, which is a lie. And this is why I say this is so important. I cannot believe people are not out in the streets, like screaming off of the rooftops about this, because what is happening here is literally step by step by step of what happened in Russia, except there it took 19 years. Here it's 8 months, and we're
Yeah.
seeing this happening.
This is really unbelievable, this targeting. Everyone's concerned about this martyrdom status that they're giving sort of Charlie Kirk, that it's really a way to consolidate the MAGA movement into a far more further right position, but to take all the splintering that's been going on in the MAGA world and unite them, but in a more extreme way. A little bit like Lenin was idolized or canonized, and then Stalin took advantage of that, becoming a far more extreme leader than Vladimir Lenin would have been. And so, we've got
Oh,
uh,
he was extreme too.
he was extreme too, but in a different
He was
way.
he was
Less
very
gulags, I think.
extreme.
Yeah, but a different kind of extreme. And so that's the concern, that this particular assassination and there, this whatever they're trying to pull out in terms of a narrative is very dangerous, in terms of how far right it can take MAGA, and how dangerous it is to the left, who are going to be targeted clearly by the Department of Justice.
And my biggest worry is of the weaponization of agencies to specifically shut this down, because this is, like I said, what happened in Russia. I'll never forget. There was it was, I believe, 19 or 18 or 19. There were Navalny protests in St. Petersburg. The security services created, because they're known for creating false flags, created an explosion in St. Petersburg subway station. Um, Putin happened to be going to St. Petersburg that day. And as a result, immediately they, cracked down and said no gatherings of, more than X amount of people outside for national security purposes. Here, you are seeing the same attack on, the Soros Foundation, the Ford Foundation, basically all civil society. And the fact that they're using the Department of Justice, Pam Bondi yesterday, I looked at her, I was like, what country was she born in? For her to carry on that hate speech is now,
Yet he
can
said,
be
well, the Justice
prosecuted.
Department will absolutely target anyone who targets others with hate speech in the wake of the killings of Charlie Kirk. Would absolutely target. Unbelievable.
What country is this?
Mm.
What country did she grow up in? Because in America, no matter how vile hate speech is, unless it is done to further an act, a criminal act, or to target a specific person, this is considered free speech. So, I mean, trust me, I've seen so many times myself being called a Nazi for, being Ukrainian, the garbage I have spewed online against me, I can't even begin to tell you. And by not even bots or trolls, but like regular people. Mm, But I would never, ever, ever say you must, agree to that Russia's the aggressor in Ukraine.
Yeah.
This is the beauty of America that you have this free speech. If I don't like it, don't listen to it. That's it. Or respond back or don't listen. But the bottom line is the government has no right to prosecute you for it or to prosecute organizations. And I mean, if they deem everyone a domestic terrorist, so is Act Blue domestic terrorist who is now under investigation? Or is Indivisible who plans protest, a regular, normal, peaceful protest, committing acts of terrorism? We're going down a very, very slippery slope.
It is very slippery. And, Charlie Kirk himself said that hate speech does not exist legally in America, and said that absolutely it should stay. These kind of civil liberties are what makes America special and free, and that we should continue to preserve them under every circumstance. And now that they're using Charlie Kirk's death as a way to prosecute against free speech is unbelievable. This is a very serious story, and people hopefully will start paying more attention to it, although I'm not sure if anyone knows exactly what to do in this climate.
What to do? We have to push back and organize and really have strategic protest, have strategic organization, target our elected officials, state officials, and, whether Republican or Democrats, and as well as, Congress. Like, we need to organize, and this needs to be, the one thing I keep saying that is missing here. The protests are great, but we need strategy, because without strategy, you're not going to get far except having everyone with their own message, their own plaque, coming out. And that's it. Like, this needs to be a whole campaign. And then when elected officials feel the pressure, both Democrats and Republicans, then they are going to get, uh, have to act. Because, like I said here, the fact that you don't agree with someone or you have something to say, like, are we all supposed to be like, puppets or penguins, like sitting and praising?
I mean, that's what they're trying to do. That's the authoritarian way, right?
And
Yeah.
that's it. And they can, unless their opinion is organizing the next assassination or the next act.
Mhm.
You're allowed to have your opinion in this country, no matter how vile it is. And that's it. And that's what we can do. We need
And
to
it's really
organize.
concerning that, the when you look at other countries that have gone through this kind of authoritarian grab, um, thousands of people have disappeared in those countries. It's not just, one person assassinated and then maybe a response to that. We're talking about thousands of people have disappeared from the streets, disappeared from the country. No one knows what happened to them. It's the kind of environment that they're building where you can't voice your opposition, where you've got this security police, state police infrastructure that can grab anyone off the streets and disappear them or deport them to other countries. This is a very tricky situation to be in. And, it's what may seem now like just a few illegal immigrants or whatever you might be, is going to grow to a lot of these opposition leaders and opposition figures and anyone who has a view that's different from the MAGA view is going to be, liable for this kind of deportation.
And just in general,
Yeah,
libel. And, in the article I pointed out, I'll never forget, again, it was like 2018, I believe, or 20, I think 2018 or 19 protests, because both years there were protests. Navalny was organizing them around the country. And I will never forget that, one person was organizing a protest locally. They were charged with terrorism, and prosecuted for this. Another person, the memorial that I mentioned, won a Nobel Peace Prize. A person like that post, and they were charged and hauled away by security services. Another person like the post, it was a teacher, and security services, FSB, very publicly showed up, as he was walking into his university, grabbed him and, made a scene, because with Russia, everything is public. They like to, put fear into people. So they televise this, broadcast this. I remember after the 2016 election, um, hey, Claude, one of the main people involved in Kaspersky, he was in the middle of a meeting and security
remember
services
that.
came, put a bag over his head, bagged him, and dragged him out. This is like an everyday, occurrence in Russia. Um, and this is where we're moving here. And I'm not sure why Americans want to live with this, because I remember the condemnation when I used to post things that are happening in Russia and how people were just shocked and appalled. And now that it's happening here, it's like I don't see the pushback that is necessary for this. And I
We no
really,
longer have an
really hope.
example of what it looks like to, America used to be able to be a contrast for Russia. America doesn't have that contrast anymore of a country that feels free. So we know there's nothing to compare what's going on here to what's going on elsewhere in the world, and that's very sad. Um, we'll continue to talk about this. We'll continue to find solutions and continue to bring you up to speed with what this regime is doing on a day-to-day basis. Thank you, Olga Lautman from the Trump Tyranny Tracker. You should all subscribe to her if you haven't already, and you should also consider a paid subscription. She does a lot of amazing work, and now she does apps as well. So she's she's multi-qualified. And also, the Unmasking Russia is her other terrific Substack, and it includes a lot of interesting stuff right now about the 2016 election and Russia's takeover of that. I'm Zev Shalev. I'll be back in 30 minutes at 3 o'clock with the Five Stack with Dean Blundell. We're talking about a whole bunch of things today. Should be an interesting show. Hope you'll join me then. Thank you for being here, everybody, and see you tomorrow.
Bye, everyone.